All right, let's dive in. This time we're taking a look at Rod Judkins, The Art of Creative Thinking. We've got some excerpts here ready to unlock some creative potential.
Judkins is interesting because he draws from all these different areas, like art, music, business, all of it, really. And then he turns it into like actual advice. So we're going to go through it and see what we can use.
And he really starts off strong with this whole beginner's mindset thing. Like he talks about being asked to create a soap opera in Dubai out of the blue.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's stepping way outside your comfort zone. He was there for creative workshops, right? And then suddenly, bam, soap opera. But he did it. The power of just saying yes.
It's so true. We get stuck thinking we need to be experts before we can even try anything new.
Well, Judkins actually says that being too much of an expert can be a problem. You just keep doing the same old things. But a beginner's mind, that's about seeing things fresh, always learning.
Like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But maybe the teacher is the experience itself, you just got to dive in.
Exactly. You got to be ready to learn, even if you're already, accomplished. And speaking of uncertainty, he has this really interesting idea about doubt.
Oh yeah, this is where it gets good. He talks about David Hockney,
Mm.
super famous artist, and even he, like, confided in Judkins about feeling insecure. You'd think at that level.
Right. You think confidence would just be flowing. It's a real paradox. But Judkins says don't see doubt as a weakness. Use it. Doubt can really push you to do great things.
So it's almost like feeling like you're not good enough yet that can actually push you forward.
Exactly. It makes you strive, improve, really push those boundaries. It's about using that energy, not letting it stop you.
Okay, now this one was a bit abstract for me, being the medium. What do you take away from that?
Hmm. It's about thinking hard about the tools you use to express your ideas and making sure they work with your message. He uses this really tragic example, the Space Shuttle Columbia
Like,
disaster.
it's a space shuttle.
Yeah, so there was a potential issue during the launch, but get this, the information got lost on a PowerPoint slide. It was too dense, too cluttered.
I mean, PowerPoint caused a space shuttle.
Well, there's this expert on visuals, Edward Tufte, and he says that PowerPoint often leads to this information overload. It's a powerful example of how the medium itself can get in the way.
That's a scary thought. So what does being the medium mean for someone who's not, launching rockets?
Well, it's about asking yourself, is this the best way to get my idea across? Whether it's PowerPoint, a report, even just talking to someone, think about what the tool can do, what it can't do, make sure it helps your message, not hides it.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting gears a bit, Judkins talks about how important playfulness is for creativity, even for adults. He compares it to, like, how kids are so uninhibited.
Right. He talks about IDEO, the group that designed the first Apple mouse. Back then, product design was so formal, but IDEO, they were playful, building models out of scraps, toys, all sorts of things.
It's like kids building forts, pillows, blankets, whatever they can find, they just go for it.
And that's what led to such an amazing design. It wasn't just about fun, it was about creating a space to experiment, take risks, and that led to a real breakthrough.
So playfulness isn't just about relaxing, it's a way to come up with new ideas.
Absolutely. It's about letting go of those inhibitions, trying things out, not being afraid to fail. Think about how you can be more playful in your own work,
Hmm.
brainstorming, making prototypes, even just being a little silly.
I like that.
Like,
Now, speaking of giving yourself permission, Judkins also says we should value expression more than perfection. He brings up that Philip Stark lemon squeezer, the Juicy Salif.
yeah.
That design is iconic, but terrible at actually squeezing lemons.
Ah, yes. Form over function.
Hmm.
Judkins uses this to say that sometimes being imperfect actually makes something more memorable and impactful. He even compares it to uncomfortable chairs and unwearable shoes, things that are successful because they're imperfect.
It's like they're saying, we're going to be bold, even if it means it's not practical. Makes you think about what being original really means.
Yeah, it challenges the idea that everything needs to be perfect and functional. Sometimes being a little bold, even impractical, makes it more human, more interesting, and people actually like it more. It's about how it makes you feel, not just how well it works.
It's about the art, not just the craft.
Precisely. And that leads us to finding inspiration in unexpected places, especially nature. The Beijing Bird's Nest Stadium is a great example.
Oh, that's a beautiful building. It really does look like a giant nest.
And the architects, they actually got their inspiration directly from bird nests, both for how it looks and how strong it is. They even use translucent panels, like a real nest's insulation.
It's amazing how nature provides these, like, blueprints for us. Judkins also mentions Velcro, inspired by those little burrs that stick to your clothes, and even corporate structures, modeled after hierarchies in nature.
Yeah, it's called biomimicry. It's basically looking to nature to solve human problems. Nature's been around for billions of years, figuring things out, so there's a lot we can learn from it.
So go outside, open your eyes, and let nature inspire you.
Absolutely. You never know what you'll find. Sometimes the best ideas are right there in front of us.
Okay, this next one might be tough, especially in today's world. Judkins talks about the value of solitude and thoughtlessness, like actually disconnecting to be more creative.
Right. He tells this story about impressionist painters. They used to use black mirrors just to give their minds a break. They'd gaze into them and kind of let their subconscious do the work.
Sounds almost meditative.
Right. And then there's people like Stefan Sagmeister, the designer, and Simon Cowell. Both workaholics, but they take year-long sabbaticals to renew their creative energy. It's about giving your mind space to wander and make new connections.
I think we're so afraid of that quiet, that stillness. Like we always need to be doing something.
But that stillness is where those breakthroughs often happen. Judkins says it's really important to have these periods of thoughtlessness.
So put down the phone, step away from the screen. Easier said than done.
It might feel weird, especially these days, but it's really valuable. See what happens when you disconnect for a bit.
Okay, last one for now. Judkins talks about truth bombs and being memorable. And he brings up Jonathan Swift's essay, where he suggests eating poor children to solve poverty.
Oh, wow, yeah. Shocking, but that's the whole point. Swift was using satire to expose the truth about poverty. Judkins calls this a truth bomb, using creativity to reveal a hidden truth, even if it makes people uncomfortable.
He also mentions Andy Warhol's dollar bill paintings and that famous urinal, Marcel Duchamp's fountain. All of them challenged what art was supposed to be.
It's about being bold, pushing boundaries, making people think differently. Those works that really shake you, make you question things. That's the power of a truth bomb.
So leave a mark, make people remember you.
Right. Exactly. Be fearless. Use your creativity to say something powerful, something that lasts.
Welcome back. So one thing I really like about Judkins is that he's all about the practical side of creativity.
Totally. He doesn't just talk about big ideas. He actually gives you things you can use,
Right. Like this whole idea of being a generator of ideas, not just waiting around. It reminds me of that Robert De Niro story. Remember, he was getting frustrated with auditions, so he decided to take charge.
Oh, yeah. Found that book about Jake LaMotta, the boxer, and was like, this needs to be a movie, and he just went for it.
And bam, Raging Bull. If he hadn't been so proactive, who knows?
Exactly. It's about taking control of your creative journey, not just waiting for something to happen.
Like, be the author of your own creative story, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of taking control, Judkins talks about being positive about negatives, which,
Yeah, sounds a bit contradictory. But it's a really interesting shift in mindset. He talks about Roy Lichtenstein, the pop art guy.
oh, with those, like, comic book style paintings.
Yeah, those. But before that, he was doing abstract expressionism, totally different. And when he switched, people hated it. They dismissed him completely.
Wow, real.
But instead of getting discouraged, he used that. He leaned into the negative feedback and just kept going.
It makes you think maybe those critiques, even the harsh ones, can be helpful. Like, they show you where you can push boundaries.
That's exactly it. It's not about ignoring the criticism. It's about reframing it. Don't see it as a setback. See it as a chance to grow, what can I learn here? How can I make this even better?
I'm starting to see that. Now, this next one I think a lot of us struggle with, especially if you're a bit of a perfectionist. Judkins talks about cutting it out.
Oh, that's a tough one. It's about being ruthless when you're editing, We get so attached to our ideas, every little detail.
Killing your darlings, letting go is so hard.
He says you got to detach from those initial ideas and ask, is this really working? Is this making it stronger, or is it just clutter? Be willing to cut things out, even if it hurts.
It's about putting the final result first, not your ego, right? Sometimes less is more.
Totally. A well-edited piece, whether it's a painting, a song, writing, it's way more powerful than something that's just overloaded with stuff.
Okay, this next one's really inspiring. Judkins talks about growing up without growing old, keeping that sense of playfulness and curiosity that we have as kids.
Right. He uses Georgia O'Keeffe as an example. She was painting amazing stuff well into her 80s, always exploring new things. Judkins says she never lost that youthful spirit, and it fueled her creativity.
So it's not about trying to stay young. It's about keeping that spark alive no matter how old you are.
Yeah, it's like as you get older, you have more experience, more understanding, but you combine that with a sense of wonder and openness to new things.
You know what? This ties in nicely with another point he makes. Aspiring to have no goals. Now that sounds a bit crazy.
I know, right? We're always told goals are important, but he has a really interesting take on it. He uses the example of William Burroughs, the writer who used the cut-up technique. He basically just rearranged words randomly to write his novels.
Wow, so like complete surrender to the process.
Yeah, he let go of trying to control the outcome and just let things happen. Judkins says this can actually lead to discoveries you'd never make if you were too focused on a specific goal.
It's about loosening up, being open to the unexpected, kind of freeing in a way.
Yeah, totally. Shifting the focus from the destination to the journey itself.
I like that. Now this next one, opening your mind. Judkins talks about Andy Warhol's factory as a prime example. It was like this explosion of creative energy, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was this crazy mix of people from all walks of life, everyone collaborating, pushing boundaries,
Yeah.
organized chaos.
And that's what made it so special, right? That openness, that feeling that anything was possible.
And Judkins says that atmosphere was key to Warhol's success. It was a place where different perspectives were welcomed, where you could experiment without judgment. It's not just about being open to new ideas, it's about creating a space where those ideas can thrive.
A space for ideas to breathe. Okay, now this one hits home in our always-on world. Judkins talks about pausing for thoughtlessness.
He's a big believer in taking breaks from all the stimulation. Give your mind a chance to rest and recharge. Remember those impressionist painters with their black mirrors?
Yeah, like hitting the mental reset button.
Exactly. And he connects that to people today like Stefan Sagmeister, the designer, and Simon Cowell, the music guy. Both super busy, but they make a point of taking time off, even extended breaks, to renew their creativity.
So step away from the screens, put down the phones. Easier said than done.
I know it feels counterintuitive, but it's so important for your creative well-being. Give your mind a chance to wander, to make those connections. You never know what might come up.
Okay, this next one is a bit wild, but I kind of love it. Planning to have more accidents. Sounds dangerous.
Haha, no, not like that. It's about being open to the unexpected. He says we get so focused on avoiding mistakes, sticking to the plan, that we can actually block our creativity.
Like Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin,
Right.
totally by chance.
Exactly. He was looking for something else entirely, and bam, a whole new world of medicine opens up.
How many amazing things have been discovered that way, just by accident?
Judkins says we should embrace those moments of serendipity, those detours and surprises, because sometimes those lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
Letting go of control a little bit, letting yourself be surprised. Now, talking about things not going as planned, he also has a section on picking yourself up.
Yeah, that resilience, that ability to keep going even when it's tough. He uses James Dyson as an example, the vacuum cleaner guy. It took him over 5,000 prototypes before he got it right.
5,000. Talk about persistence.
That's the thing. You're going to face rejections, setbacks. It's inevitable. But the people who make those creative breakthroughs, they just keep going.
They don't give up. They learn from those experiences and use them as fuel. I like that.
Judkins says setbacks are just part of the process. It's not about avoiding them. It's about what you do afterward.
Okay, this one I'm still struggling with. He says, be as incompetent as possible. How can that be a good thing? Isn't the whole point to become more competent?
I know, it sounds crazy, but he's saying that we get so caught up in being perfect, knowing all the rules, that it actually limits us.
So it's like letting go of that need to be right all the time.
Exactly. He tells this story about a student trying to come up with a restaurant idea, and by embracing his incompetence, he came up with this idea for a takeout place where you could order from different restaurants nearby. Simple, but it worked.
It's that beginner's mind again, isn't it? Not knowing all the rules can lead to totally new ways of thinking.
Totally. Embracing incompetence in this sense is about being open, willing to experiment, having fun with it, not taking yourself too seriously.
Not being afraid to make mistakes. That's a big one. All right, switching gears a bit. Judkins also talks about maintaining momentum. How do you keep that creative energy going, especially on big projects?
He uses F. Scott Fitzgerald as an example. He believed in immersing himself completely, writing nonstop until he was done. That momentum, that flow, was everything to him.
It's like finding that zone where the ideas just flow and you're completely lost in it.
And Judkins says a big part of that is silencing that inner critic. You know, that voice that tells you you're not good enough. Trust your gut, embrace the messiness, and just keep going.
A friend of mine, an artist, he once told me, don't get precious about your work, just keep making stuff.
Love that. And it connects with another point Judkins makes, making the present a present. It's about really being in the moment, enjoying the act of creation, not worrying about the past or the future.
Finding that peace in the process, even when everything else feels crazy.
And that's where the magic happens. When you can shut out those distractions, those anxieties, and just be present with the work, that's when your best stuff comes out.
That's like you said, flow state.
Yeah.
You lose track of time, you're just in it.
Totally. Now, this next one might resonate with a lot of us as we, get older. Being mature enough to be childish.
Haha, that sounds fun. Like, don't lose that sense of play as you grow up.
Exactly. He uses Steve Jobs and IDEO again. Remember how they presented that Apple Mouse prototype made out of scraps? Jobs was all about high design, but he was impressed by that playful approach.
And it led to a totally revolutionary product. It's a good reminder not to take ourselves too seriously, to let go a little bit.
Embrace that silliness, that curiosity. Bring back that joy of just creating like when we were kids.
I love that. All right, one more for this part of the deep dive. It's a bit of a head scratcher, but interesting. Being perceptive about perception.
This one's about being aware of how others see you and your work. He uses Isambard Kingdom Brunel as an example. He was this 19th century engineer who was really careful about his public image.
So, like, your personal brand matters.
Yeah, Brunel understood that how people saw him would affect how they saw his work. It's not about being fake, it's about being smart about how you present yourself, making sure your message gets across.
Like, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Exactly. Perception is powerful. It can really impact your success. And that brings us to another interesting idea, being naturally inspired.
This is where he talks about how nature has always been a source of inspiration. Right?
Totally. Think about the Bird's Nest Stadium, inspired by, well, a bird's nest. Or Velcro, which came from those burrs that stick to your clothes. Nature is full of amazing designs and processes.
Like, nature is the ultimate innovator.
Exactly. And Judkins says we should spend more time in nature, observing, letting those observations spark our own creativity.
So go outside, open your eyes, and let nature be your muse.
Yeah. Who knows what you'll find? Sometimes the most brilliant solutions are right there, just waiting to be discovered. All right, this next one's a little strange. He says we should avoid being an expert on ourselves.
What's that about?
Well, he's saying that sometimes we get too focused on our own self-image, our strengths and weaknesses, and it actually limits us. We get stuck in a box.
So it's about letting go of those preconceived notions about who we are and what we're capable of.
He says we should approach our work with a sense of curiosity, openness, allowing ourselves to be surprised by what comes out, not trying to fit into a mold.
Like allowing yourself to evolve, to constantly be growing as a creative person.
Exactly. The more we're open to new experiences, new ways of thinking, the more innovative our work will be. All right, this one's a bit of a paradox. Being stubborn about compromise.
Sounds like a contradiction in terms.
He uses Paulo Coelho as an example, the guy who wrote The Alchemist. Early in his career, he got tons of rejections, but he never gave up on his vision.
So believe in your ideas, even when others don't.
Yeah. And be willing to fight for them. Being creative often means challenging the status quo, and that takes a certain level of stubbornness.
But also knowing when to be flexible,
Right.
to listen to feedback, to adapt.
It's about finding that balance, staying true to your vision, but also being open to collaboration and, constructive criticism.
Okay, this next one sounds pretty epic. Being a weapon of mass creation.
He's talking about the power of creative thinking to change things, not just your own life, but the world around you. He uses Paul Samuelson as an example, the economist whose ideas helped prevent a huge global economic crisis back in 2008.
So it's not just about making art, it's about problem solving, making a real difference in the world.
Exactly. Judkins says we can all be weapons of mass creation, using our creativity to tackle challenges, make things better.
Pretty inspiring, right? Like, your creativity can have a real impact.
Totally. Now, this next one's a bit more down to earth, but just as important. Getting into what you're into.
Okay, what's he getting at with this one?
He's talking about the importance of really immersing yourself in your subject matter, going deeper than just surface-level research. He tells the story about working with an ad agency that was trying to come up with a campaign for older people. How did he help them connect with that audience? He had the young creatives dress up as 80-year-olds and spend the day in the city experiencing what it's like to be elderly. The challenges, the frustrations.
Wow, that's brilliant. Talk about empathy.
Right. It's about really understanding your audience, walking in their shoes. Judkins says the more deeply we connect with our subjects, the more authentic and insightful our work will be.
It's about that genuine connection that leads to something meaningful. Now, he also talks about leaving an impression.
This is about creating work that sticks with people. It evokes an emotion. It stays with you long after you've experienced it. Like, think about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in D.C.
Oh yeah, that black granite wall.
Mhm.
It's incredibly powerful, even though it's so simple.
Exactly. It's more than just names on a wall. It's a whole experience. And it has a profound impact on people. Our work has the potential to really touch lives.
It's about being mindful of the legacy you leave behind, using your creativity to evoke specific feelings to make a real impact.
And this next one is so relevant these days with all the information overload we face. Designing the difference.
So this is about standing out from the crowd, making your work noticeable.
Exactly. He uses Steve Jobs and Apple as an example. Jobs was obsessed with design, even down to the smallest details. He understood that aesthetics matter, that good design can elevate a product from ordinary to extraordinary.
And that's what made Apple so successful, right? They were beautiful, intuitive, they just stood out.
And Judkins says we can apply that principle to anything we create, whether it's a product, a book, music. It's about finding those unique elements, those special touches that make your work memorable.
Finding your own voice, your own style, and making it shine.
Exactly. In a world full of noise, it's more important than ever to create work that grabs attention, that leaves a mark. Okay, this one might sound familiar, but it's worth repeating. Be as incompetent as possible.
Yeah, we talked about this before. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Remember, it's about challenging that need to be perfect, to know everything. Sometimes, by embracing our incompetence, we actually open ourselves up to new possibilities.
He uses that Christian Marclay piece as an example, The Clock, that 24-hour video installation made of all those movie clips. Brilliant work of art, but terrible at actually telling time.
Exactly, and that's kind of the point. He embraced that incompetence and created something truly unique.
So limitations can be opportunities, weaknesses can become strengths.
Totally. Let go of that need to be right all the time, and you might just stumble upon something amazing.
Embracing the unknown, the unexpected.
Now, that leads us to another important point. Maintaining momentum.
Keeping that creative energy flowing, not letting those setbacks get you down.
Exactly. Judkins talks about the importance of persistence, dedication. Like, think about Christian Marclay again. He spent years collecting and editing those film clips for The Clock.
That's dedication. It's a testament to believing in your vision and putting in the work, even when it's tough.
He encourages us to break down those big, scary projects into smaller, more manageable steps, and to celebrate those small wins along the way.
That's so helpful. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but if you can focus on those small steps, it keeps you moving forward. Now, Judkins also talks about making the present a present. What did you think of that one?
It's about being fully present in the creative process, savoring each moment, instead of getting caught up in worries about the past or the future. Like Henri Matisse, he kept creating vibrant, joyful art, even when he was facing health issues and challenges later in life.
Find that flow, that feeling of being completely absorbed in what you're doing, where time just disappears.
Yes. It's about letting go of those distractions, those doubts, and just being present in the moment of creation.
Okay, I'm feeling inspired to slow down, appreciate those moments of flow, and really be present in the creative process.
Now, this last one might sound a bit familiar, but it's worth revisiting. Being mature enough to be childish.
Ah, yes. That playful energy we often lose as we grow up.
He uses the example of the design group IDEO and their approach to the first Apple mouse. They presented Steve Jobs with a prototype made from scraps and toys. It seemed childish, but Jobs, with his high design standards, was impressed. It ended up being a groundbreaking innovation.
That's a perfect example, right? Sometimes the best ideas come from letting go of being so serious and professional. Yeah. IDEO just went for it. They were playful and experimental, and it worked.
It reminds me of how kids build forts out of anything. Pillows, blankets, chairs. They don't overthink it.
They just use what they have, and they're not afraid to experiment. Maybe that's what we lose sight of as adults. That freedom to just play and try things out without worrying about being judged.
Judkins says it's so important to bring back that playfulness. Give yourself permission to be silly, to have fun, and approach your work with that childlike sense of wonder.
Don't lose that curiosity. So it's not about being immature. It's about tapping back into that creative energy we had as kids.
Exactly. Rediscovering that pure joy of creating. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one last concept that really stuck with me. Judkins talks about contradicting yourself.
Contradicting yourself. Okay, I'm intrigued.
He says that a lot of really creative people, they have all these seemingly contradictory traits, and it's actually those inner tensions that can fuel their creativity.
Uses Francis Bacon as an example, right? The painter.
Yeah, Bacon's life and work were full of contradictions. Like, he was both a rebel and a traditionalist, introverted and extroverted. He embraced those opposing forces.
It makes you think. We always try to put ourselves in these neat little boxes, but maybe our true creative potential comes from embracing those contradictions.
You got it. Judkins says we should embrace all those parts of ourselves, even the ones that seem to clash. Don't see those contradictions as weaknesses. See them as strengths.
So it's like our most creative selves come out when we let all those different parts of us coexist.
Exactly. Be open to those complexities, because that's often where the most groundbreaking ideas come from.
That's such a powerful thought. It really challenges us to look at ourselves and how we create in a whole new way.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today with Rod Judkins and the art of creative thinking. Hope you found it as insightful as we did.
Yeah, it's been a real journey. We've talked about so many different techniques and ideas like the beginner's mindset, finding inspiration in nature, the power of playfulness, even solitude. It's a lot to digest.
And remember, it's not about following some strict set of rules. It's about staying curious, open-minded, and being willing to experiment. Like Judkins says, creative thinking is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. It's about enjoying the process, the ups and downs, the surprises, and just having fun with it.
Exactly. So what unexpected inspiration will you find today? We'd love to hear about it, so be sure to share your thoughts with us.
And join us next time for another deep dive into a brand new topic. Until then, keep those creative sparks flying.